Okay, so there are just a few more mesh editing tools that I want to cover, but these tools are not going to be accessed from the toolbar that appears on the left-hand side of the viewport when we are in edit mode. So let's quickly get into these. So I'm just going to add a circle object to an empty Blender scene. The default, I believe, is 32 vertices. And a circle object, of course, is just 32 vertices with edges drawn between them and no face to fill it. So let's duplicate this in edit mode, Shift D and Z, and pull it up. And now, say I wanted to connect these with a ring of faces around the outer edge. Now, we discussed how to do this with the fill operator. We can do this by selecting 4 points, pressing F to create a quad, and now if we just select one edge of the quad on either side, we can press or hold F to fill all the way around. Now there is just a little bit quicker way to do this. Just Control Z to undo out of that. So I am going to use the Bridge Edge Loops tool to perform that same operation in one step, essentially. So I'm going to Alt-click to select the bottom ring, Shift-Alt-click to select the top, and now in Edge Select mode, or by accessing the Edge menu up here, I'm going to right-click and I'm going to select Bridge Edge Loops. So this will quickly fill the gap between those loops. Bridge Edge Loops works on partial loop selections as well as full loop selections. Just make the selection of the area you want to bridge. You can right-click in Edge Select mode and select Bridge Edge Loops. Now there are a number of advanced options which we can look at here. We do not have to draw new faces between these. We can also use this to merge entire edge loops. So in Edge Select mode, we can right-click, press Bridge Edge Loops, and now if we click the Merge option, all that will do is collapse our two edge loops down into a single edge loop, which would leave us, in this case, with just one circle. There's some other options here for how to affect this. We can twist this edge loop. We can twist this face loop by coming here and selecting Twist. This will basically shift which vertex is drawn to which point. What I mean by that is it will shift over. So in the past, without any twist on this, if it found a point here and a point directly beneath it, it's just going to draw this line straight. But with twist enabled, it's just going to shift that over by 1. So it is now drawing it over on this point. We continue with more extreme twists as we increase and less as we decrease. Number of cuts will add edge loops in between it. And smoothness will adjust those edge loops. Now, it's important to note that these edge loops need to be roughly aligned and they need to have roughly the same number of vertices in order for bridge edge loops to work. However, it does not need to be exact. So if I rotate one of these a little bit and then select the other one, come up to edge, say bridge edge loops, you can see that Blender was able to bridge those edge loops despite them not being perfectly aligned. Now it will also be able to bridge the edge loops even if the number of vertices isn't exactly the same. Now it can't be wildly different. You can't have 32 down here and like 3 up here. That won't work, but let's just remove one of these points. So let's just select one point, let's hit X, and let's dissolve the vertex. So that's maintained this edge here, but the point in between it is just gone. So now this circle has 32 points, and this circle has 31. So now if we select both and bridge the edge loops, you'll see it is still able to bridge them, but it can only bridge them with triangles because the number of vertices is not exactly the same. Now we can bridge faces as well as edge loops. I'm just gonna delete these faces to demonstrate. So if we select a face loop up here and another face loop down here, we can right click in face select mode and come down to bridge faces. And that will draw another loop of faces in between them. And we basically have the same exact options here. We can merge them instead. We can twist it. We can cut it. We can smooth it out to change the shape. All sorts of options. Okay, so that is all I wanted to talk about for bridge edges and bridge faces, but we are not quite done with our advanced mesh tools. So the last thing I want to look at are loop tools. And loop tools can be accessed in edit mode by right-clicking, and they should appear at the very top of the context menu. If you right-click and you are not seeing this, this is because the Loop Tools add-on has not been enabled for you. So just a brief review, we enabled this add-on at the beginning of the course by coming into Edit and Preferences. We came into the Add-ons tab in the sidebar here, and you can find it either by scrolling down this list and looking, or you can, in the search bar up here, just search Loop Tools, and it should appear right here. So just make sure that this checkbox is enabled. You can save preferences by coming down to this menu and clicking Save. And now when you right-click, you should have the Loop Tools option here. Now, Loop Tools is a very expansive tool. There's all of these functions, and all of these functions have multiple sub-functions, sort of, but we're only going to go over a few of them. So the first one we're going to go over is bridge. Now, we just talked about bridge in the bridge faces and bridge edge loops menu, which is also accessible in the context menu, but this is going to run sort of a different operation if you use the bridge that is through Loop Tools. So let's just delete these faces really quick. So if we select an edge loop and we select another edge loop, and now when we right click, instead of bridge edge loops here, we're going to come into Loop Tools bridge, well, you'll see it's just done exactly the same thing. And if we do it in face mode, bridge, it actually works a little bit less accurately than our other tools, but there's other things that bridge can do. If you, for example, make a selection of a group of faces on a mesh, and you right-click, go into Loop Tools and select bridge, it will actually just cut a hole in that mesh for you. Bridge will work on a partial edge loop as well as a full edge loop, just the same as the bridge edge loop tool here. So you can experiment with bridge and see what it does in different selection modes with different types of selections enabled, but that is the bridge loop tool. Control Z. Actually, I'm just gonna delete that sphere and get a clean one. So the next one we're gonna talk about is the circle tool. And the circle tool is really interesting because if you select a single point on your mesh, right click and select circle, it will transform the points around it to be in a circle around the point that you had selected, or as close as it can get to a circle based on the resolution of your mesh. So obviously if I had more points making up this sphere, this circle would be smoother. The other thing that circle can do, let's squish this in. Say we had something that was not a circle. We could select an edge loop, right click, loop tools, and circle, and it would make that selected loop a perfect circle. So you cannot have every point selected and run this because it gets confused by these vertical edges. But let's say you had something like this and you wanted it to be a sphere. Well, you could select all of the loops running this way. Like so. You could right click, loop tools, circle, and it would make those all into a circle for you. Now, this is still an oval because it is still being stretched on the z-axis because we didn't select these ones. We didn't want those ones to be circles anyway. But the same principle applies. You could select all the way around on these ones. Oh, that got kind of wild, but I believe it got confused because this comes up to a single point. But if you were to select them sort of individually and run circle, you could make these all circular again. All right, so the next one we're going to cover briefly is curve. So for curve, let's select 2 points on the same edge loop. Right click, loop tools, curve. So now what this has done is it's sort of cut in a curved shape. It hasn't added any geometry, it has just transformed the geometry that is there to manipulate the shape into this type of curve. And you can change the shape of this curve in the curve menu settings. You know, you can change the interpolation from cubic to linear and you'll get a much sharper cut here, but that is how you can do shapes such as this. Now the last loop tool I want to cover is flatten, and flatten is going to do exactly what it sounds like. If we make a selection, go into loop tools by right clicking and click flatten, it's just going to flatten that out for you. Now it's looking at it from the Z, so this edge is much thinner because the angle at which it was looking down at it at made that lip much thinner. I don't know if that's the best way to explain it, but because this is at more of a glancing angle on the sphere, the flattened edge is thinner, whereas this is at much less of a glancing angle from the top view, so it has a wider edge. So that is all I want to talk about for the advanced modeling tools. And we're going to get into practical use cases for all of these in the next video, which I think will give you a better idea of how they would be used. So I will see you in that next video.